figured I would take the time to put my camera on a tripod instead of just setting it on my nightstand because y'all seem to really enjoy seeing Robert. So we're over here today. Hey guys, it's Hannah, and today I am doing my March wrap-up and April TBR. I am honestly very surprised that I have any books to talk about this month, but I ended up with 4 books to talk about this month. I read 4 books in the last 6 days of March. Well, I finished 4 books in the last 6 days of March. Now, if you look on my GOODREADS, you will see that I have 5 books down for the month of March because I went ahead and marked Monument Rock as read. If you saw last month's wrap-up, then you know that I had read the last story in that book, which was a Kilkenny short story, but I hadn't reread the whole book, but I have read that book before. So I was debating if I wanted to finish rereading it or if I wanted to just go ahead and mark it, and I went ahead and just marked it based off of how I felt about the Kilkenny short story and how I remember feeling about it when I first read the whole book. I'm not going to talk about it here because I didn't read it this month. I technically read it last month, and also I technically haven't finished rereading it. It's a weird book, but I went ahead and marked it as read. But the first book I actually finished in the month of March was Fish Tales, Bite-Sized Stories, Unlimited Possibilities by Stephen C. London and John Christensen. And Harry Paul. So this is the dust jacket because I am lending it to a friend who is also taking my class that I had to read this for. I had to read this for a class, which is probably the main reason why I finished it this month, but also I really enjoyed this book. So the fish philosophy is essentially about making your workplace somewhere you want to be and not something that you dread going to and just absolutely despise. It has this idea that if you make work fun, if you make it focus on the people, then you will enjoy your job more. And so in the book, it follows these different places like a hospital, a car dealership, and this fish market that's up in Washington, Oregon, one of those 2 states, where they changed their work policy and made work fun. And I really enjoyed it. It was cliche, but in like a good way, and the stories were just fun to read. And I would highly recommend this to anyone who is interested in this kind of a philosophy because it was fantastic, very inspiring, a very feel-good book, and I highly enjoyed it, and I'm really glad I highly enjoyed it. Didn't know if I was going to because, you know, it was for a class, and also it does look very cliche, but I definitely recommend it. The next book I have is I finally finished Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde? What's his name? Something like that. This book follows a kid named Eddie who lives in this world, future world, I guess, where the class systems are defined by what color you can see and how much of that color you can see, and that decides your rank in this whole world. And his dad gets reinstated into this outer fringe, I think is what it was called, place, and there's all these set rules in this society, and it's about Eddie figuring stuff out, I guess. This book has taken me so long to read. Let's see when I put it on. I marked this book as read on February 20th, and I finished this book on March 30th. That's how long it took me to read this book. So this was pitched to me as it has a Douglas Adams tone to it, and I could kind of see that, and I did enjoy the parts when I could kind of see that, but it read more like 1984 by George Orwell, and I didn't love that book, and I just didn't love this book, and I just felt like I wasn't retaining anything that was happening, and it was not keeping me invested. That was my main problem. I just never really wanted to pick it up. Like, I never dreaded picking it up exactly, but I was never like, okay, time to go and read my book. I just never felt that. I think my problem was the characters and the world. I just didn't like any of it. This world just annoyed me so much, and then the characters just annoyed me so much. So everything that happened, I was like, this is so stupid, this is so dumb, I don't like this. And I think that just was a major part of me not wanting to pick it up and keep reading it. And so I almost finished this book, and I was told that I should keep reading it because the ending was great. The ending sucked. I thought it was going to be great, and I was all prepared, and then in the last like chapter and a half, it all goes to hell. And I couldn't with it. I was gonna give this book 3 stars. As long as it took me to read, I was gonna give this book 3 stars. It's like, okay, I don't hate it, I just don't love it. It's kind of a mediocre book. Like, I wouldn't say people shouldn't read it, but I just wouldn't say it was my favorite. So I think it's kind of a middle ground book. And then that happened, and that just made me so mad. It's a 2 stars for me, guys. And that's pretty low for me. Like, I'm pretty generous with my stars usually. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd recommend it. It wasn't bad. I thought it was good. I thought it was well done, but I didn't enjoy it. But I also sometimes enjoyed it. It was a very strange reading experience. And I don't know how to feel. I really don't. The next book I read was Instant Winner by Carrie Fountain. This is a book of poetry that if you saw last week's video, you know that I was doing my on my shelf thing and I was like, I should read this. And so I ended up reading it and I didn't hate it. Did I absolutely love it? No. And I was expecting to not absolutely love it, so maybe I kind of set myself up for failure in that regard, but I did think that it was good. Some of the poems I didn't like the way they were cut up because it just made it feel very choppy, but then in other poems it seemed to work well, so it's just a balancing act of the two, and sometimes I thought it was done well and sometimes it just made reading the poem kind of annoying. I will say Texas and New Mexico both made an appearance in this book, and so that kind of heightened my enjoyment a little bit, not gonna lie. And there were some poems that I just didn't care much for, but the ones that I did like, they were very domestic and very authentic, and I did like that aspect of it. One that I really liked, and the reason that I really liked it was because it said something along the lines of, I want to describe this evening even though it was not spectacular. And I liked that because it was kind of putting importance on the mundane things of life, and I liked that. So I thought it was okay. Some of them were good, some of them I didn't care for, but as a whole, I read the book. That counts for something. Just a reminder for anyone who doesn't know, I'm not a huge poetry person, so I'm not avid in my reading of poetry, I guess you could say. But I did enjoy it. The final book I read in the month of March was H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. This book is about a woman whose father passes away, and to try and help herself cope with the grief, she decides to take up training a goshawk. And so it kind of documents her time doing that, and it also goes back to this author of a book that she read as a child about training goshawks, and she's kind of going back and looking back at his life while she documents her experience with training the hawk. And I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was very authentic, very well researched. Sometimes I didn't care for the parts about White, who's the other author, but other times I think it was really beneficial because it kind of gives you a distance from the story. And that might sound weird, but the parts when she talks about her grief are so raw and so jarring that if the whole book was like that, you'd be miserable the entire time. So I think the addition of the White snippets were very intentional and very smart because it gives you this distance from the story that almost keeps you sane while you're reading it, because she's drowning in her grief, and the way she writes about it, if the whole book was like that, I feel like you as the reader would just be drowning right along with her, and that wouldn't make the book as enjoyable of a read. I feel like this book still put me in a very kind of melancholy mood. I sat down and binge read it on the 31st of March, the last day of March. I was determined to finish this book so I could talk about it now, and I ended up not having a whole lot of human interaction that day, and in the book she doesn't have a whole lot of human interaction for large chunks of it because she's so focused on training this hawk. And so that kind of isolation that I had put myself in gave me this weird kinship to the isolation she was in the book. And she'd have little snippets where she'd see and feel this like sense of community, and that day I had a little snippet of interaction with people when I went to a workout class. But you see what I'm saying? It was a weird way to connect to the book with just the situation of the day that I binge read the book. So it was a weird kind of kinship because I was spending my time focusing on the book and she was spending her time focusing on the hawk, so it just kind of drew me into the story in a different way. But I highly recommend this book. It was really, really well done, very intense and heartbreaking, but in a manageable way. Some points it was a rough read, not gonna lie, pretty rough. But overall, highly recommend, highly enjoyed. I think it was very well done. And if you're wanting a book that does grief in a very authentic way, I definitely think this is the route to go. Oh, my battery's blinking. Okay, for my March TBR, I'm doing kind of like a whole video, maybe a whole video series. That's kind of up in the air as how that's gonna work, but I'm focusing on reading mysteries this month. So I'm not gonna tell you the specific books I'm gonna be reading because I'm saving that for that video, but I'll tell you my challenges that I've set for myself. The first one is to read a Murder, She Wrote book, and then I want to read an Agatha Christie Miss Marple book, and then I want to read an Agatha Christie I always forget. I looked it up the other day. Then a Henry Press book. Henry Press is a publisher in Frisco, Texas. Then read a book with a pun in the title. Then read a food-related murder book. And then reread a childhood favorite that was a mystery. So that is my March TBR. Hopefully I get to it all. Hopefully I get to more than that. That would be ideal. But that is what we are going for. Again, there will be like more in-depth videos on this coming to you later. So look out for those. So that is it for this video. Comment down below and let me know what books you read in the month of March and how was your reading month, because mine sucked until I got to the last 6 days, and then I just managed barely to finish 4 books, which is wild to me. Also comment down below, let me know if you are planning on doing some kind of themed reading for any of your months. Obviously I'm doing the theme of mystery. And if I read a book that's not a mystery book, then we're gonna let that slide. But I do want to focus on mysteries this coming month. So is there ever a time that you focus on one kind of genre or subgenre or whatever it is of books? Let me know. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see y'all again in another one soon.